So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This is See Through. This is my podcast. My name is Achita Gopi, and I am here trying to do the best I can to help us all see through the challenges of spiritual life. And we get to read Krishna book. We get to read spiritual literatures, which also help us see ourselves and see each other through all of the challenges of this life. So that's what this podcast is all about. We get to come together, we get to check in with one another, we get to hear from one another, and we get to hear from Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual teachers and acharyas and see what they have to say about all of this. So thank you so much for joining, whether you are joining live on Patreon in our Zoom room, or whether you're joining live on YouTube. Thank you once again for being here. I am putting the link to Patreon in the chat on YouTube in case anybody would like to get involved, help support, help get more uh, kind of one-on-one dealings with me. You can go check that out over there. And we'll be reading from Krishna book. So if you don't have a Krishna book and you really, really, really need to, definitely want to read along with us, it is available online. And so the link to finding Krishna book available and free right online is also in the chat on YouTube. So thank you, everyone. What a pleasure it is to be here with all of you. First, we'll start by invoking the blessings and the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, who had painstakingly given us such a summary of Krishna's pastimes. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So we've been journeying through Krishna book, which is a summary of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's quite a long summary because the 10th canto is quite extensive. And the 10th canto deals with so many of Krishna's pastimes. So this Krishna book is such a good summary of all of those pastimes. And I love it because we are in the business and in the process of making Krishna our best friend, re-recognizing Krishna as our supreme bestie. But it gets kind of difficult to do that if we know nothing about the person that we've been reestablishing our relationship with. So why read Krishna book? Why go through all of this and why try and figure out who Krishna is? Because the more we learn about him, the more we tend to fall in love with him and in love with the ways that he can work out our lives. So this one is entitled From a Curse to a Blessing. And last week on Monday, it was the last day of Kartik, a beautiful month where we constantly glorify the childhood pastimes of Krishna. And we spoke about one such pastime in the previous chapter where Krishna was bound up, literally tied with rope, by his mother because he was incredibly naughty. And we had lots of fun. We spoke about many, many things. And in the process of binding Krishna, Krishna gets angry and Mother Yashoda leaves. And so Krishna is now angry with his mother and he thinks, let me do something even more naughty. And so he eyes two trees. And we got a little bit of a hint that those two trees used to have lives as people. So now we are getting to figure out what happened to those two trees to make them into trees from people. And then what happens in our own lives when we are feeling as though life has given us a set of circumstances and now we're just stuck dealing with it. Is this a curse? Is it a blessing? Does the God of the universe hate us Is that why we're going through all of these tests? So we'll try and explore a little bit in all of that as we continue with our Krishna book reading. We are starting in chapter 10, the deliverance of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. The story of the cursing of Nalakuvara and Manigriva and their deliverance by Krishna under the all-blissful desire of the great sage Narada is here described. So the cursing and the deliverance somehow happened under the all-blissful desire of the great sage Narada. You know, sometimes I wind up wondering, how could a curse be all blissful? How could this be given by someone who is all blissful and seemingly wants the best for us? Now, we understand it when it happens with parents. Sometimes we understand it when it happens with parents. But when it happens with life, it's like the older we get, the more we turn against the idea of any kind of discipline or control being placed on us. But I think it's worth recognizing that we are, all of us, always under some kind of control. Even though we like to pretend as though we're not, and we're independent, free beings at all times. So let's see what happened to this Nalakuvara and Manigriva under the all-blissful desire of the great sage Narada. The two great demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were sons of the treasurer of the demigods Kuvera, who was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. So within the realm of the Devas, they have so many positions and people who are taking care of so many different things. So Kuvera is the god of wealth, and he's in charge of all of that. His two sons are Nalakuvara and Manigriva. By the grace of Lord Shiva, Kuvera's material opulences had no limit. As a rich man's sons often become addicted to wine and women, so these two sons of Kuvera were also addicted to wine and sex. Once, these two demigods, desiring to enjoy, entered the garden of Lord Shiva in the province of Kailash, on the bank of the Mandakini Ganges. The plot thickens. There they drank much and engaged in hearing the sweet singing of beautiful women who accompanied them in that garden of fragrant flowers. In an intoxicated condition, they both entered the water of the Ganges, which was full with lotus flowers. And there they began to enjoy the company of the young girls, exactly as the male elephant enjoys the female elephants within the water. While they were thus enjoying themselves in the water, all of a sudden, Narada, the great sage, happened to pass that way. He could understand that the demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were too intoxicated and could not even see that he was passing. The young girls, however, were not so intoxicated as the demigods, and they at once became ashamed at being naked before the great sage Narada. They began to cover themselves with all haste. The two demigod sons of Kuvera were so intoxicated that they could not appreciate the presence of the sage Narada, and therefore did not cover their bodies. Have we ever felt as though we are in a situation where we are too concerned with our importance to appreciate the spirituality in our lives? We ever feel like we are in a situation where we think, oh, I have way too many other important obligations in order to go here or there or anywhere for the sake of my spirituality? This, even more than the intoxication from wine, this intoxication that comes from our own self-importance, can also drag us away from recognizing when spirituality enters into our lives. Sometimes that self-importance can stop us from realizing what's best for us. And such was the case with Nalakuvara and Manigriva. Narada, on the other hand, on seeing the two demigods so degraded by intoxication, desired their welfare, and therefore he exhibited his causeless mercy upon them by cursing them. Now, again, we might think of this, that a curse is usually a bad thing. Now someone is exhibiting their causeless mercy on someone else by seemingly putting them into a difficult situation. Now, we don't have to be the ones who are putting others into a difficult situation, but we can wonder, when we ourselves are put into difficult situations, is this actually a curse? Or can this be a blessing? Let's see. Because the great sage was compassionate upon them, he wanted to finish their false enjoyment of intoxication and association with young girls, and wanted them to see Lord Krishna eye to eye. That is the biggest blessing. Imagine if someone, or if life were putting you into so many situations just so that you could see Krishna eye to eye. This is what Queen Kunti is speaking about and praying for and praying about within the Mahabharata, within the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when she says, me and my sons have been put into so many calamities, but after each calamity, we were able to see you, Krishna, as you came and saved us. And so let those calamities come again and again. For with each calamity comes the opportunity and the most blessed event of being able to see you eye to eye. So now we have a little bit of a gauge. When these calamities are coming upon us, when life is stressing us out, we can wonder, is this the end of the world? Or is it an opportunity to find Krishna? To turn to Krishna and pray and say, oh, my friend, I need your help. Come and save me. Come be with me personally. Please allow me just to see you face to face. It's worth giving some thought to. So, Narada desired that they see Krishna eye to eye. He conceived of cursing them as follows. He said that the attraction for material enjoyment is due to an increase of the mode of passion. A person in the material world, when favored by the material opulence of riches, generally becomes addicted to three things: intoxication, sex, and gambling. Materially opulent men, being puffed up with the accumulation of wealth, also become so merciless that they indulge in killing animals by opening slaughterhouses. And they think that they themselves will never die. Such foolish persons, forgetting the laws of nature, become overly infatuated with the body. They forget that the material body, even though very much advanced in civilization, up to the position of the demigods, will finally be burned to ashes. And while one is living, whatever the external condition of the body may be, within there is only stool, urine, and various kinds of worms. Thus, being engaged in jealousy and violence to other bodies, materialists cannot understand the ultimate goal of life. And without knowing this goal of life, they generally glide down to a hellish condition. In their next birth, such foolish persons commit all kinds of sinful activities on account of this temporary body, and they are even unable to consider whether this body actually belongs to them. Generally, it is said that the body belongs to the persons who feed the body. One might therefore consider whether this body belongs to one personally or to the master to whom one renders service. Now we might think, I'm not serving anyone. I'm living my own life. Srila Prabhupada also makes the point, we are always serving someone. We are always serving something. It just depends on what. What are we giving our attention to? What are we giving our time to? What are we dedicating ourselves to? Sometimes it's a job and a boss. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes children. Sometimes a spouse. Sometimes a friend. Sometimes a pet. But we are always serving someone, caring for someone. It is such a natural tendency of the soul. We have been groomed within the world today to think that service and offering service is weak. We've also been groomed to think that caring for others is weak. But here we can understand that it's simply natural, not necessarily good or bad at the root, but just natural. We've seen others wield this kind of service as a weapon, isn't it? We see people wield their emotional hold on people as a weapon. We have seen that people use the servitude of others as a weapon. But intrinsically, it's natural for the soul to offer some kind of service. So we are always in service of someone or something. Sometimes the first step to breaking that misconception is just acknowledging the truth of it. Acknowledging that we are in service to someone or something. Now I get to make the choice. Who do I serve? What do I serve? What will I dedicate myself to? Will it be to endless scrolling? And if that's the case, why? Am I looking for something? What am I looking for? And have I actually found my satisfaction in what I've dedicated my time to? Now, if not, if we find that we are dedicating our time and our service to things that are not bringing us any satisfaction, then maybe we can adjust some things. We may not be in a position to adjust everything, but maybe we can adjust one or two things to give ourselves more time to serve and devote ourselves to the things that are actually going to give us satisfaction. I happen to think that the greatest satisfaction of mine comes from when I am really throwing myself into my spirituality. If I am chanting half-heartedly, reading half-heartedly, doing spiritual things half-heartedly, it always feels like a struggle. One that I can never keep up with. It's a habit that I just cannot seem to continue. Right? Something that it is always going to take such fight and determination. But I also acknowledge that it's because I'm only doing it half-heartedly. I have not given myself over, really, to the time that I spend with my spirituality. But when I do, when I really throw myself into it, there is a feeling of satisfaction. So many people liken it to first falling in love with God. Sometimes we can think, why did I feel that way in the beginning and not now? It's possible. Sometimes we have to see where we have given away our heart. Even though in name we say it still belongs to you, God. Sometimes we give it away. Sometimes we shut it down and close it down. Sometimes for good reason, because we think that will protect us. Sometimes we become stone-hearted, hard-hearted, immovable. And we have to work on allowing our hearts to be cracked open again. At least spiritually. I cannot guarantee that this material world will be a safe place for your heart. But the spiritual place, the spiritual reality, and not always a spiritual organization, but your spiritual practice will always be a safe space for your heart. It already is the safe space of the heart. So let's see what happens with Nalakuvara and Manigriva. So the master of slaves claims full right to the bodies of the slaves because the master feeds the slaves. Now this might be quite controversial, right? Like some people might be thinking, why would Srila Prabhupada be making an analogy to slaves? Slavery equals bad. But we tend to forget that he also came from a place where people were enslaved. He also came from a place where people were colonized, etc., etc., etc. They were trying to fight for their freedom. He even thought at one point in his life that it would be better to fight for freedom and then spread God consciousness. His spiritual master gave him the tough realization, the tough love that what independence do we think we will have in this place? There is no true and lasting independence in this place because this place already has a mistress. Material nature is a very intense mistress of this place. And so when we think, I'll change it, I'll fix it, I'll do this, I'll do that, we start the spiral that leads us to a place of unending grief. We will find ourselves arguing with people who have no intention of changing their mindset, who have absolutely no intention of changing their ideals or their ideations. Not only that, but we will find people who seem to make it their life goal that things don't change for the better. Then what do we do? And we haven't even gotten into the intricacies of karma, which the moment we do, our heads start to spin because it feels like there's no way out of this entangling web. And that is the point. There might not be a logical way out of this entangling web. We may not be able to fix this place because this place is not permanent. But there is a spiritual reality that is very, very different. So I like to look at these statements of Srila Prabhupada with a little bit of context about who he is, about his commentary on we have seen life. There might not be a formal slavery, but there is definitely an internal one. Right? We might think we have abolished things, but there are internal mindsets that so many are carrying with them. So, let's see. It may be questioned then whether the body belongs to the father, who is the seed-giving master of this body, or to the mother, who develops the child's body in her womb. Foolish persons are engaged in committing all sorts of sins due to the misconception of identifying the material body with the self. But one should be intelligent enough to understand to whom this body belongs. A foolish person indulges in killing other animals to maintain the body, but he does not consider whether this body belongs to him, or to his father, or mother, or grandfather. Sometimes a grandfather or father gives his daughter in charity to a person with a view of getting back the daughter's child as a son. The body may also belong to a stronger man who forces it to work for him. Sometimes a slave's body is sold to the master on the basis that the body will belong to the master. And at the end of life, the body belongs to the fire, because the body is given to the fire and burned to ashes. Or the body is sometimes thrown into the street to be eaten by dogs and vultures. Before committing all kinds of sins to maintain the body, one should understand to whom the body belongs. Ultimately, it is concluded that the body is a product of material nature, and at the end, It merges into material nature. Therefore, the conclusion should be that the body belongs to material nature. One should not wrongly think that the body belongs to him. And this is the key. We're all thinking, this is mine. My body belongs to me. This is all that I need to figure out. There is no one that I have to be under the control of. But not quite so. To maintain a false possession, why should one indulge in killing? Why should one kill innocent animals to maintain the body? When a man is infatuated with the false prestige of opulence, he does not care for any moral instruction, but indulges in wine, women, and animal killing. In such circumstances, a poverty-stricken man is often better situated, because a poor man thinks of himself in relation to other bodies. A poor man often does not wish to inflict injuries to other bodies because he can understand more readily that when he himself is injured, he feels pain. As such, the great sage Narada considered that because the demigods Nala Kuvara and Manigriva were so infatuated by false prestige, they should be put into a condition of life devoid of opulence. So Narada understood they're not going to understand anyone else's point of view until that point of view becomes personal. Even in Ramayana, it is stated that one never fights for someone else's cause, which means that people put their efforts into solving other people's problems when that problem becomes increasingly and incredibly personal. I hope that this is not how I have to learn all of my lessons, because it's painful when the problems are made incredibly and increasingly personal. But I want to change my perspective. I want to shift my perspective and understand that that person's struggle could easily be my struggle tomorrow. And so at the very least, maybe I can't save the world, but in trying to be spiritually minded, in trying to be Krishna conscious, I can maybe bring a little bit more joy to the lives of others. Sometimes just saying, I just don't want to cause anybody suffering, is even out of my control. Sometimes we can say or do things unknowingly that just cause other people suffering. But what I can do is, knowingly, through my Krishna consciousness, if I'm able to offer my efforts to my supreme dearest friend, I might not be able to save them, but I can bring a little joy to their lives. And so in the course of maybe trying not to add to the sufferings of others, my bigger goal is to bring joy to others, so as not to have to learn the hard way personally. But Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, it seemed as though they should learn this difficult way. A person who has a pinprick in his body does not wish others to be pricked by pins. A considerate man in the life of poverty does not wish others to also be put into that condition. Generally, it is seen that one who has risen from a poverty-stricken life and becomes wealthy creates some charitable institution at the end of his life so that other poverty-stricken men might be benefited. In short, a compassionate poor man may consider others' pains and pleasures with empathy. I love that empathy is a part of our spirituality. It's a part of godliness. A poor man may be seldom puffed with false pride, and he may be freed from all kinds of infatuation. He may remain satisfied by whatever he gets for his maintenance by the grace of the Lord. To remain in the poverty-stricken condition is a kind of austerity. According to Vedic culture, therefore, the Brahmanas, as a matter of routine, keep themselves in a poverty-stricken condition to save themselves from the false prestige of material opulence. False prestige due to advancement of material prosperity is a great impediment for the spiritual emancipation. A poverty-stricken man cannot become unnaturally fat by eating more and more. And on account of not being able to eat more than he requires, his senses are not very turbulent. When the senses are not very turbulent, he cannot become violent. Another advantage of poverty is that a saintly person can easily enter a poor man's house, and thus the poor man can take advantage of the saintly person's association. So this harkens back to the beginning when I was saying, we ever realize or figure out or think, I have too many responsibilities, I have too many amazing things to recognize the spirituality that is going on around us. A very opulent man does not allow anyone to enter his house. Therefore, the saintly person cannot enter. According to the Vedic system, a saintly person takes the position of a mendicant, so that on the plea of begging something from the householder, he can enter any house. The householder, who has usually forgotten everything about spiritual advancement because he is busy maintaining family affairs, can be benefited by the association of a saintly person. There is a great chance for the poor man to become liberated through association with a saint. Of what use are persons who are puffed up with material opulence and prestige if they are bereft of the association of saintly persons and devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? The great sage Narada thereafter thought that it was his duty to put those demigods into a condition where they could not be falsely proud of their material opulence and prestige. Narada was compassionate and wanted to save them from their fallen life. They were in the mode of darkness, and being therefore unable to control their senses, they were addicted to sex life. It was the duty of a saintly person like Narada to save them from their abominable condition. In animal life, the animal has no sense to understand that he is naked. But Kuvera was the treasurer of the demigods, a very responsible man, and Nalakuvara and Manigriva were two of his sons. And yet they became so animalistic and irresponsible that they could not understand, due to intoxication, that they were naked. To cover the lower part of the body is a principle of human civilization. And when a man or woman forgets this principle, they become degraded. I like that this is across board, not just for one gender or the other, it's for everybody. It's like the mark of a spiritually civilized person. Narada therefore thought that the best punishment for them was to make them immovable living entities, or trees. Trees are, by nature's law, immovable. Although trees are covered by the mode of ignorance, they cannot do harm. The great sage Narada thought it fitting that although the brothers, by his mercy, would be punished to become trees, they continue to keep their memory to be able to know why they were being punished. And so Srila Prabhupada, in some lectures, he calls it tree punishment. He says sometimes your parents tell you, okay, you're on a timeout, go stand in the corner. He said this was similarly tree punishment. They were on a celestial timeout. They had to really figure out and reprioritize. And they couldn't even forget why they were trees. Narada wanted them to remember. You sit there and think about what you've done for a long time, because trees live for a long time. So it's so interesting to see, we can think, wow, so glad that didn't happen to me. Did it? Has it ever? Have we ever been in a place where we feel like our hearts are completely clouded over, shut down? We can't even appreciate anything around us. And we have our memory of, I remember when times used to be so different. Sometimes we are put into a timeout, even in these bodies. emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. Sometimes we are put into a situation where we are sat down and we can feel like this is a curse. Why would God, who is all loving, let this happen to me? Why would this occur? Now let's see how this curse becomes the greatest blessing. After changing the body, a living entity generally forgets his previous life, but in special cases, by the grace of the Lord, as with Nalakuvara and Manigriva, one can remember. Sage Narada therefore contemplated that the two demigods should remain for 100 years in the time of the demigods, which is longer than the time of humans, in the form of trees. And after that, they would be fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face by his causeless mercy. And thus they would be again promoted to the life of the demigods and great devotees of the Lord. After this, the great sage Narada returned to his abode known as Narayan Ashram, and the two demigods turned into trees known as twin Arjun trees. The two demigods were favored by the causeless mercy of Narada and given a chance to grow in Nanda Maharaja's courtyard and see Lord Krishna face to face. Although the child Krishna was bound up to the wooden mortar, he began to proceed towards the growing trees in order to fulfill the prophecy of his great devotee, Narada. So this just goes to show, even if we have received something which feels unsavory or feels as though it could be a curse, this is also, it could be the mercy of elevated souls. How often are we put into sticky situations and we fail to see how anything good could come of this? These trees were standing for hundreds of years and human years. And I'm sure wondering, how could this ever turn into something good? But now, we have little baby Krishna, rarely seen. He's about 3.5 years old, with chubby legs and such a sweet, soft, tender body, crawling through the courtyard. They say, our spiritual teachers comment, and they say that not only does Krishna see these trees face to face, but because they were standing in the courtyard of Nanda for so long, Krishna would play with these trees. Sometimes he would play hide and seek with his friends, and so he would hide behind one tree. Sometimes in order to play hide and seek with his friends, he would run and finally catch hold of a tree and finally think, okay, I'm safe. And he would wrap his arms around these trees. This is something never before obtained. This is causeless mercy. Now you might think, what in the world could they have done to obtain such causeless mercy? And some people might think, oh, for people who have had drinks in their lives or have even eaten meat in their lives or have done any kind of unsavory behavior, if you think there's no coming back for you, this is the story to tell you that that thinking is not true. Nalakuvara and Manigriva, it does not say that they performed all kinds of austerities and prayed to Krishna and stood on one foot and did all these things. They got cursed to live in this poverty-stricken condition, degraded, having to be tolerant, right? The wind is assaulting them. The rain is assaulting them. The cold is assaulting them. The sun is assaulting them. What devotional service did they do? But they offered themselves as a playmate to Krishna. They got the good fortune to offer shade to Krishna. How is this possible? This is what we get when we come in contact with spiritually minded teachers. Amazing that a curse turned out to be a blessing greater than anyone could have ever imagined. A blessing that we sing about now. A blessing that we pray for. Just as you delivered the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, I simply pray you give to me your own Prema Bhakti. I only long for this and nothing else. No benedictions of liberation, no benedictions of wealth can compare to what these two trees got. The love and the care of Krishna. Seeing Krishna face to face in a rarely before seen pastime. As a baby, with small butter-covered limbs. Sometimes he would rest on a tree. Who can even imagine the good fortune of these two cursed brothers? So, Krishna began crawling toward the trees to fulfill the prophecy of Narada. Lord Krishna knew that Narada was his great devotee, and that the trees standing before him as twin Arjun trees were actually the sons of Kuvera. I must now fulfill the words of my great devotee Narada, he thought. Then he began to proceed through the passage between the two trees. Although he was able to pass through the passage, the large wooden mortar stuck horizontally between the trees. Taking advantage of this, Lord Krishna began to pull the rope which was tied to the mortar. As soon as he pulled with great strength, the two trees with all branches and limbs fell down immediately with a great sound. Out of the broken fallen trees came two great personalities shining like blazing fire. All sides became illuminated and beautiful by their presence. The two purified bodies immediately came before child Krishna and bowed down to offer their respects and prayers in the following words. So before we were speaking about understanding someone else's plight and it being very personal. So why did Krishna choose now to save them? Why now? What's the big deal? The thing is that those two trees were kind of in a bondage situation. And Krishna, now also being tied up and unable to move freely, understood their plight. And so our acharyas say that Krishna understood how it felt. And so he had so much compassion in his heart for them being bound up by the blessing of Narada. And so he thought now is the time to free them. And thus these two trees were freed and began to pray as follows. Dear Lord Krishna, you are the original personality of Godhead, master of all mystic powers. Learned Brahmins know very well that this cosmic manifestation is an expansion of your potencies, which are sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest, because they're talking to a 3.5-year-old baby. So sometimes all of his potencies are manifest and sometimes they're a little hidden. You are the original provider of the life, body, and senses of all living entities. You are the eternal God, Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading, the principal controller of everything. You are the original source of the cosmic manifestation, which is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. You are living as the supersoul in all the multiforms of living entities, and you know very well what is going on within their bodies and minds. Therefore, you are the supreme director of all activities, of all living entities. But although you are in the midst of everything, which is under the spell of the material modes of nature, you are not affected by such contaminated qualities. No one under the jurisdiction of the material modes can understand your transcendental qualities, which existed before the creation, Therefore, you are called the Supreme Brahman, who is always glorified by his personal, internal potencies. In this material world, you can be known only by your different incarnations. Although you assume different types of bodies, these bodies are not part of the material creation. They are always full of transcendental potencies of unlimited opulence, strength, beauty, fame, wisdom, and renunciation. This is the meaning of Bhagavan, one who possesses all 6 opulences, or one who is full of bhagya. And so these opulences are opulence, strength, beauty, fame, wisdom, and renunciation. In the material existence, there is a difference between the body and the owner of the body. But because you appear in your original spiritual body, there is no difference for you. When you appear, your uncommon activities indicate that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such uncommon activities are not possible for anyone in material existence. You are that Supreme Personality of Godhead, now appearing to cause the birth and death as well as liberation of the living entities, and you are full with all your plenary expansions. You can bestow on everyone all kinds of benediction. O Lord, O source of all fortune and goodness, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you. You are the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of peace, and the Supreme Person in the dynasty of King Yadu. O Lord, our Father, known as Kuvera, the demigod, is your servant. Similarly, the great sage Narada is also your servitor, and by their grace only, we have been able to see you personally. We therefore pray that we may always be engaged in your transcendental loving service by speaking only about your glories and hearing about your transcendental activities. May our hands and other limbs be engaged in your service and our minds always be concentrated at your lotus feet and our heads always bowed down before the all-pervading universal form of your lordship. When the demigods Nalakuvara and Manigriva finished their prayers, the child, Lord Krishna, the master and proprietor of Gokula, bound to the wooden grinding mortar by the ropes of Yashoda, began to smile and said, "It was already known to me that my great devotee, sage Narada, had shown his causeless mercy by saving you from the abominable condition of pride due to possessing extraordinary beauty and opulence in the family of the demigods. He has saved you from gliding down into the lowest condition of hellish life. All these facts are already known to me. You are very fortunate because you were not only cursed by him, but you had the great opportunity to see him. If someone is able by chance to see a great saintly person like Narada face to face, who is also always serene and merciful to everyone, then immediately that conditioned soul becomes liberated." Please keep in mind that these words are spoken by 3.5-year-old baby Krishna. It's really cute. There's nothing sweeter than seeing little people speak such eloquent, transcendental knowledge. So we can hold this vision in our hearts of just a little baby. He was just crawling. He's just 3.5, and he's so small, but also he is the Supreme Person, magically able to speak all of this transcendental philosophy and wisdom. This is exactly like being situated in the full light of the sun. There cannot be any visionary impediment. Therefore, O Nalakuvara and Manigriva, your lives have now become successful because you have developed ecstatic love for me. This is your last birth within material existence. Now you can go back to your father's residence in the heavenly planet, and by remaining in the attitude of devotional service, You will be liberated in this very life. After hearing this, the demigod circumambulated the Lord many times and bowed down before him again and again, and thus they left. The Lord remained bound up with ropes to the wooden grinding mortar. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 10th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. This is how a seeming curse or a difficulty or a reversal can become such a blessing in our lives. Sometimes the things that we are resisting the most are the things that will actually help us in our spiritual lives. Sometimes we have to allow ourselves to be helped. That pressure doesn't always feel nice. It's not always comfortable, but neither is surgery. Surgery is so uncomfortable that they have to put bodies into a state of complete forgetfulness and unawareness in order to fix them, to rehabilitate them. And then even physical therapy or rehabilitation therapy that comes after a surgery can be very uncomfortable and very painful. But sometimes it is needed in order to adjust us in our lives. So same spiritually, emotionally, mentally. These adjustments, they don't always feel comfortable. But we should know that there are great souls who are looking out for us. Great souls who are eager to bless us and give our lives its perfection. So sometimes if we think, I don't have a lot of money, but I have Krishna. And my friend has said, Krishna book has spoken, that this poverty lifestyle can be a kind of austerity. And so, oh Krishna, I know that I did not necessarily choose a lifestyle with that in it. But since I'm here, please accept my austerities as an offering to you. Let me just try one more day, despite any and all reversals and obstacles, to just be Krishna conscious, to be conscious of you, my friend, my dear supreme bestie, my Krishna. So when we find ourselves put in a tough spot, we can pray to Krishna. I'm in this tough spot, but you can turn this tough spot into a blessing. I feel cursed, but you can turn this curse into a blessing. Oh my Lord, just as you did with Nalakuvara and Manigriva, please save me from these calamities. Let me see you. Let me gain your mercy, even though I have done nothing to deserve it. I have tried my best. We are all trying our best. And Krishna sees that. Krishna knows. And it's not nothing. It doesn't mean that it is absolutely nothing. It is amazing. Trying our best is everything. That is all that Krishna wants. Did those two trees do an incredible amount of service? They did tree service, but now they're famous. Forevermore, they are famous because of their contact with Krishna. So whether we think we have the ability to perform a lot of service or a little bit of service, as long as we try our best, when we come in contact with Krishna, it makes everything, every endeavor, every aspect of our lives perfect. We may not see it at first, but the more that we keep that faith, the more we'll see it. The more we will find and appreciate the unlimited blessings of Krishna that are flowing into our lives. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in on a Monday and read Krishna book with you all. I feel like this enlivens me, keeps me spiritually connected, and it keeps me going. So thank you for giving me a chance to share Krishna. These efforts are perfect, and there's no one who can ever take them away or tell you different. So today you've done a great thing. You've put your efforts into getting closer to our dearest friend. May all of your attempts be successful and be perfect. And may we acknowledge the many, many ways that Krishna is showing up in our lives, every single one of our lives. If this story of Nalakuvara and Manigriva teaches us anything, it is that there is always redemption. There is always a way to come back to Krishna. There's nothing that we could have done that is too far gone for Krishna not to acknowledge us. So thank you. I'll see you all again soon. Thank you to so many of you who've been joining on YouTube. My goodness, it was just phenomenal. I kept looking at how many people were watching and just feeling this overwhelming sense of gratitude. So thank you. Thank you to our regulars. Thank you so much to new friends. Thank you to all the friends that I've met around the world. I see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please come back again next Monday, where we will continue reading Krishna book, same time, same place. I'm wishing you all the best day. Thank you all so much again. Hare Krishna.